Hey, my name is Morgan Long, and today I'm going to be talking about tort law, specifically looking at negligence and the breach of duty. Negligence is determined by if a person of reasonably prudent behavior would have acted in the same way. And then looking at breach of duty, it's used to determine if appropriate care was given to the injured person. We're going to go ahead and assume that there is an established duty because teachers are responsible of taking care of students and providing a safe environment. So that's why we're going to look specifically at the breach of duty, which is used to determine if appropriate care was given to the injured person. There's a link below that you can watch that gives a short overview of negligence and breach of duty. Safety first. So why does it matter to me? Because we're in charge of keeping kids safe on a daily basis, and you're going to have students at some point in your career that are going to be injured. And it's important to know the legal aspects that come along with that. So we have a duty to keep students safe, and it's an issue that we deal with on a daily basis. We also need to be aware of legal responsibility that comes along with keeping children safe. As I was researching and finding articles on this and reading the text, one specific moment that happened in our school popped in my mind. And although there was no legal cases that came from it, a student tripped over a desk and it resulted in him breaking his arm. So I thought that it was very interesting after reading these cases and researching more about this topic, what can really happen and the legalities that come along with that. So teachers have a legal duty to keep students safe based on tort liability law, even if they are accidents. Once there's an established duty, the injured individual must prove that there was a breach of duty. Breach of duty is defined as the failure of a person to provide an appropriate standard of care. The care of the student may be varied based on the following aspects of the child. The age, experience, and maturity level. So students that are younger will need a higher standard of care, as well as students with developmental delays or special needs. They will also require a higher standard of care than students in a general ed classroom. Another aspect that can affect the care of the student is the environment where the incident occurs or the type of instructional or recreational activity. Some questions to consider when deciding if the defendant did breach their duty. One, was the standard of care acceptable? And two, would a reasonable person act in the same way? If you click the link below, it kind of defines and gives a short synopsis of what a reasonable person is. In the next slide, I'm also going to go over what that is as well. So they take into account when they're deciding if a reasonable person would act in the same way, they take into account the physical attributes to determine if the same type of person would act in the same manner. So they do take into account if you're tall, short. They're not going to compare two people of completely different physical attributes and expect them to act in the same way. Mental abilities of the defendant are not taken into consideration. So the courts assume that all individuals are capable of making sound decisions in situations regarding the care of individuals. You may be held to a different standard based on certifications, skills, or knowledge. So if a teacher holds a chemistry degree, they're not going to be held to the same standard as a teacher that does not hold a chemistry degree. They're going to be held to a higher standard because of their certification, skills, or knowledge. If an incident occurred in a lab with chemicals being mixed, they are going to be held to a higher standard because they have the skills and higher knowledge. One of the cases that I researched was Munn versus Hotchkiss School District. So the student went on a trip to China with the school during the summer, and while on the trip, the student got bit by a tick and contracted encephalitis, and because of that, she lost her speech and some of her motor skills. The family sued the school on the grounds that this was a foreseeable incident, and there was a breach of duty because the proper care was not given to the individual. As I read through the case, some of the things that they said that could have prevented this from happening was the student wearing proper clothing instead of shorts and a t-shirt, or that the student also would have checked for ticks, or the teacher would have prompted them to check for ticks after the hike that they went on. In a Second Circuit court, the school was held responsible for the damages, and there was a breach of duty found. The courts explained that insect-borne diseases are foreseeable and could have been avoided with the proper care, and they ruled in favor of the student. This case was then taken to the Supreme Court of Connecticut, where the jury again ruled in favor of Mann, explaining that the school was responsible for notifying the parents in the waiver, which they did not do, about insect-borne diseases, and they should have provided extensive directions and cautions about insect-borne diseases to the students. The second court case that I researched, which to me was really the most relevant and kind of can happen to any classroom and any teacher, that's why I found it so interesting, was the Johnson Johnson versus the School District of Millard. So a first grade student in music class was injured playing London Bridge. The music teacher had demonstrated to the students how to play the game and explained the directions and the rules to not horseplay. And after the instructions, the teacher allowed the students to play with friends while she played music. Johnson, who's the student, said his classmates were playing too rough, and he asked them to stop and claims to have tried to get adult attention. He was thrown into a bookcase and had to receive 50 stitches in his head. He says that the teacher was not watching when it happened, and the teacher claims that she saw when it happened, so when he actually hit the bookcase, but the events that led up to that she did not see because she was writing on the blackboard before the incident occurred, so she didn't see them playing rough with the student. The trial court found that the teacher did breach her duty and should have been watching the students as they played the new game. What was interesting that I found was that they said she didn't have to watch for the whole duration of the time, but she should have watched at the beginning of the game while they had just learned how to play London Bridge. And because she did not do that, she breached her duty and did not provide a safe environment. So they ruled that the teacher providing instructions was simply not enough, and that this was a foreseeable injury that could have been avoided with proper supervision. The teacher was found providing a negligent environment because she was not supervising the children when Johnson was being swung, as he says, hard and fast by his peers. To me, this was very relevant because there's many times that teachers turn their back after giving explicit instructions, but that just shows you that providing the instructions is not enough. You need to make sure that you are supervising and making sure that you are being proactive. So in conclusion, just some points to wrap it up is that because teachers have a duty to protect children, it's important that we know the legal aspects when it comes to negligence and if we could be liable for a breach of duty. Like in the last case, you wouldn't think that just writing on the blackboard, turning your back while students played what seems to be a simple game would result in any legal action, but it definitely can. Although accidents happen, teachers are reliable and responsible for attending to foreseeable dangers to keep children safe. So it's important that we are taking those preventative and proactive measures to ensure that we are aware of the foreseeable dangers that could happen on the playground or in the classroom, so providing a safe environment that way. In every negligence case that has established a duty, courts will determine if a reasonable person would have acted in the same way under similar circumstances. Teachers should be alert of foreseeable dangers and act responsibly in situations with their children and their safety to avoid legal repercussions. To me, this was a very relevant topic for all teachers, and we should be aware of the importance and the legal aspects that can come along with breach of duty. So accidents are going to happen, but we have to be responsible at making sure that we are we are attending to foreseeable dangers. I really enjoyed exploring this topic more and understanding this more as a whole, and I hope that you enjoyed as well.